And again, everyone joining is on mute, but if you have any questions, please feel free to either use the chat or the Q&A function, and we will have a formal Q&A at the end of everyone's presentations. So just to get us started, I wanted to walk through a little bit of an introduction for some partners who are joining today. It might be your first time learning about Riipen and also learning about some of these student work placement partners. So the webinar today will be focused on how you can leverage government subsidies to hire students for your business, more specifically around a specific funding program called the Student Work Placement Program, or the SWOP program for those of us who work in this day in and day out. So just an agenda for today, I'll do a quick round of introductions for our wonderful speakers. We will have a presentation from TechNation, then ICTC, and finally Venture for Canada. All three of them are different student work placement program providers. And then we will end with Q&A, but Ben and I will try to get to your questions throughout as well. So just to kick off with an introduction for what Riipen is, we are a project-based learning platform that connects businesses and nonprofits to higher education so that the students have opportunities to real-world learning opportunities. We work with about 5,000 employers of all shapes and sizes, anywhere for really small startups to very large corporations, and of course the nonprofit sector. Since our launch in 2016, we've provided about 45,000 student experiences, and that is growing on a day-to-day basis. And we work with about 1,000 instructors in just over 200 institutions across North America. So for the types of experience that we facilitate, and today we'll be focused on a particular type of experience, which is one that we're able to access funding through from the Student Work Placement Program. Riipen does offer curricular in-class projects, which are typically placed inside of a classroom. So if you can envision that as a professor replacing or adding an experiential learning component to a portion of their course, Riipen facilitates those connections between the professors and the employers. We also facilitate competitions and hackathons, which are shorter term engagements that usually happen either over the term of a week or a weekend, but it's again a chance for the students to connect with employers and to show what skills they can demonstrate. And then finally, and this is relatively new for Riipen and mostly in response to COVID, which is something that all of us are dealing with right now. As you may have heard, thousands of students had their placements unfortunately either canceled or pushed back. So we launched project-based virtual internships as a way to support the connection of industry partners to students in a more flexible virtual way. And then today I'm happy to announce to anyone on the webinar as well that we are, to support businesses during COVID, waiving the cost of an advanced license to Riipen before May 31st. So you get access for the full year if you're able to sign up before then. And if you want to, I'll have my colleague Ben post some more information in the chat. Please reach out to us. We're happy to talk to you about what your business needs are and how we might be able to support you, either through virtual internships or also, of course, happy to connect you to any of our partners on the call here today if you have more questions about the funding. So without further ado, we've got three wonderful speakers on the call today. So Brett is the Senior National Program Manager at TechNation. TechNation is an industry government nexus for technology prosperity in Canada. They did just recently rebrand, so they were formerly known as the Information Technology Association of Canada. TechNation serves close to 300 members and unites the Canadian technology sector, governments, and communities to enable prosperity from coast to coast in Canada. Next up, we have Elizabeth Mills, who is ICTC's Senior Director of Skills Development. Recently, she also broadened her portfolio to include the management of ICTC's immigration initiatives. ICTC is the Information and Communication Technology Council of Canada. It's a nonprofit national center of expertise for the digital economy. Through trusted research, innovative talent solutions, and practical policy advice, ICTC helps to foster innovative, globally competitive Canadian industries and empowered by talented and diverse digital workforce. And last but not least, we have Jamie, and I hope I'm saying this right, Proctor-Boyce, who is the Manager of Business Development and Partnerships for Venture for Canada. Venture for Canada is an internship program that gives Canadian students and recent grads immersive entrepreneurship training and real-world job experience at startups and small businesses. Their internship program provides students with innovative work experiences and over 20 hours of professional development that is all designed to prepare students for the future of work. So very excited to have all of you here with us today to tell us more about your programs and of course more about the subsidy programs that you offer and what makes these unique, and also importantly, how our partners can access them. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so that everyone can see your faces in the large version, and Brett will kick off with you.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to provide a quick overview of the Student Work Placement Program before I talk about the program specifics that TechNation operates, called the Career Ready Program. So thanks Daniela and Ben, and certainly to Riipen for hosting us today. There's a lot of you out there, so I think there'll be a lot of benefit. So again, just a high-level overview today. The Student Work Placement Program is funded through ESDC, so that's Employment Social Development Canada. The funding model is 50% of wages are covered. That's capped at $5,000. And there's also an increased wage subsidy opportunity, which is based at 70% of the wages, up to a maximum of $7,000. And that's triggered when the student is a female in STEM program, a first-year student, if they're Indigenous, a person with a disability, or a newcomer to Canada who's immigrated within the last 5 years. And that's the same across for all sectoral partners in the SWIP program. The funding was earmarked, I think, in 2015, 2016 in the budget, and we were able to launch in 2017. So there's a pot of money that was assigned and budgeted, and sectoral partners came forward with proposals. So there's a number of us representing different sectors like technology, the mining space, clean tech, startups and scale-ups. Our current active partners in this at the moment. And then in 2019, the program expanded beyond STEM to include arts and humanities students, which is very critical, I think, as we move forward, to make sure that we're including arts and humanities in STEM. We call it STEAM. And the purpose of the program is to grow and scale the amount of quality work placements in Canada, work-term placements. I think by 2030, kind of the goal is that we're hoping to see every student from every academic program engage in some sort of work-integrated learning opportunity. So the funding is available for students who are participating in a co-op program, as well as non-co-op. So a lot of the time in the summer, especially, we'll be able to fund students who aren't part of traditional co-op programs. And we're able with this funding to engage in lots of different sort of forms of will. So I was just using co-op as sort of a structured example. You might be familiar with internships. And then there's funding through institutional partnerships as well. So things like we're talking a little bit more about today, like applied research projects and capstones, things that Riipen sort of facilitates. And as well, student challenges and hackathons, where students can integrate their learning into real world experiences and challenges. And just to, again, high level, to go over some of the key or the most important or common eligibility factors. If you're an employer, you have to be Canadian business. You have to have net new students, so an increase from last year to this year. And you have to be able to provide a paid position for the student. And then for the students, key eligibility requirements are essentially the student can't be an international student, unfortunately, and they can't be a recent grad. So they have to be in or returning to studies. And then more specifically, you have to meet the requirements of the sectoral partners. So, which for us, of course, you know, TechNation, we're looking for roles that are tech immersive. So the student doesn't necessarily have to be from a tech discipline. They certainly can be sort of interdisciplinary, or like what I had mentioned, arts and humanities. There's plenty of roles in technology for them. And the company doesn't have to be a tech company either. we're kind of saying, moving forward, pretty much everybody is a tech company. Everyone's doing something technological these days. And so these are some of the reasons I think that make the program so great is really and truly it is quite flexible. I think sometimes applying for a government grant or funding can sometimes be challenging or take up a lot of time. I think for the most part, a lot of the partners have done a really good job at making a really efficient and meaningful application process. And there's going to be some changes coming to the SWIP program too. I think there's going to be maybe some sort of announcement tomorrow. So we will make an effort to, as a group, come back together tomorrow to provide some collective information, some keynotes from our presentations today, and we'll make sure that that gets distributed as well. And certainly, after I'm done speaking, I'll put in the chat box my contact information and the landing page for my program. So if you'd like to keep in touch, or if you have any direct follow-up questions, or if you're interested in the program immediately, let me get some information to you. So now I just want to talk about the Career Ready program. So certainly we follow this model along with all of the other partners who each run their program uniquely with their own sort of processes and benefits. Our program to date has placed about 2,000 students, and we'll go on to place another 9,000 until the funding ends in 2022. And we became involved in this really to help address the talent gap in Canada's tech sector. And so far, it's been a really fruitful way of doing that. Applications are all managed through our online application portal. Makes applications pretty simple. Once you have a student lined up, it could take anywhere between 10, maybe 15 minutes to input all of the necessary information, and you can certainly apply for multiple students. We have 3 placement periods in a year. I think most partners follow suit. So there's summer, winter, and fall, which each last 4 months. And you can apply again for additional funding after the 4 months have ended. We guarantee about a 1 or 2 week turnaround for applications, but lately we've been on top of it, and it's been about 3 days, so it's a pretty quick process. And we have several resources and guides available if you have any questions, including tools to help employers connect with students. So if you actually don't have a student ready to apply with, you can begin the application process. You can receive a pre-approval certificate for your organization. And then with that, we send out tips and resources for you to be able to connect with students. And so as the presentations kind of go on today and you learn a little bit more, do your own research, certainly you will observe some similarities between all of the delivery partners. And certainly when you're participating in the Career Ready program, we invite you to come along, and we invite all of our employer partners to come along and connect and affiliate with Tech Nation and all of the other great work that we're doing in the industry alongside of the Career Ready program as a national tech organization and as a SWIP partner. And I think those are some of the things that make us unique and differentiate us. And we're always looking to collaborate and partner with post-secondary institutions and industry partners. We do a number of entrepreneurship workshops for students, student challenges, hackathons, and employers can become involved in those as well. We can do all of this really exciting stuff online now in sort of the post-COVID world. We're also working on delivering some curriculum-based modules where, for example, young entrepreneurs who are operating a startup, for example, can come in and learn about leadership, which will in turn enhance their supervisory experience, thereby intensifying the work integrated learning experience of the students working with them. And then I'll just touch quickly on COVID, some of the changes that we've made to our program. Post-secondary institutions are now eligible to participate as employers. So I think that's pretty much the same across the board for all SWIP partners. We pretty much always have and continue to endorse and support remote work. A lot of employers we've touched base with were concerned about being able to provide a meaningful supervisory experience to remote working students. It's completely possible. We certainly do encourage it. And one of our partners, CUL, which is the Canadian Work Integrated Learning Council have put out a number of resources. Maybe we could include those for you as well. And we're all changing and adapting and pivoting to the best that we can. We're all highly adaptable people, especially in tech. So we're exploring innovative ways to evolve the program, evolve WIL, and provide incentives for employers who are seeking students to provide business solutions through project-based learning, research projects, and that's why it's so exciting to be working with Riipen. So again, there are truly so many moving parts, and we will keep you updated probably early next week as a follow-up to this. And I look forward to connecting with all of you. Hopefully I blasted through that as quickly as possible because I'm really excited for the Q&A period with you. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brett. And Elizabeth, you're up next.
Hello, everyone, and thanks very much to Riipen for hosting this event, and thank you all for participating. Brett, you did a super great job at providing an overview of the Student Work Placement Program, so thanks very much for that. And welcome to Jamie as well. Jamie is with Venture for Canada, which is located out of Atlantic Canada, and I'm in Halifax at the moment, and so very happy that Venture for Canada is on board. Danielle, thank you very much for providing the overview of the ICTC role, and just want you to know that she provided us with each 3 questions. So the first one was sort of a description of ICTC and how we are different from other organizations. The second one was supports to employers and schools, and the last one was on the application process. So I'm going to follow that format that you provided. So thanks very much. And as she indicated, ICTC is a nonprofit national center of expertise in the digital economy. And we've been around 26 years. We have basically 3 arms that operate. One is our policy and research development arm, and the second one is our programming arm. So our policy and research folks do a lot of research on the economy and specifically on the digital economy and the need for a talented and diverse digital workforce. And that information is used to provide policy advice to government and also to assist employers as they adopt technology and as they plan for their human resource needs in a digital economy. In addition to that, we provide programming, and that programming is based on the evidence work that's done through our research arm. We provide employment support, upskilling, reskilling programs for newcomers to Canada, workers who've lost their jobs and transitioning into tech jobs, recent grads, youth, as well as we operate other wage programs in addition to the WIL Digital. We also have an arm of program that is focused on the kids in the K-12 system. So we're working with children at the young age to encourage them to go into tech fields and technology areas of study. Unique programs that we offer to employers and to schools. We have an eTalent Canada portal, and that portal provides very helpful, up-to-date labor market information on jobs that exist across Canada, what the salary rates are of those jobs, and what the demographics of the workforce is, and what educational programs and institutions exist in those areas throughout Canada, provincially, and also municipal levels. We have a job site, so we're able to help employers post their jobs and find job seekers who post their resumes. And we provide a number of other resources, including assistance with developing learning plans. We offer additional e-learning modules for our students who are in WIL placements. And one example is called FinTech 101. We developed an 8-module course that assists students who are taking a work placement in financial services industry. And those courses are basically helping to online participants or students in those jobs. The content was informed by companies in the financial services industry, and they indicated that they wanted to hire students mostly in software development, IT areas, but the students knew very little about financial services industries. So what they wanted us to do was to help with that onboarding. There's only 560 hours or so normally attached to a work placement. So providing that 8-module course really gives them a great orientation to the industry. And we're working on similar courses for other sectors. Our application process is very easy. Similar to what Brett described, I think all of the SWILP organizations are working hard to have a very efficient and fast process that's very customer service oriented for our employers and our students. Also, as Brett mentioned, the federal government expanded eligibility so that students in all disciplines are now eligible. And that is very, very important because as the economy has transformed with the advent of technologies such as 5G, artificial intelligence, blockchain, autonomous systems, and others, we're witnessing an era where the rate of change and growth is scaling at a phenomenal pace. And under such an environment, technology is no longer relegated to a single sector. Instead, digitalization and the demand for digitally skilled talent are and continue to be seen and felt across all sectors of the economy. So it's not surprising now that students in all disciplines such as arts, social sciences, humanities, as well as STEM qualify for the student work placement program. As Brett mentioned as well, the federal government has recently introduced a number of measures because of COVID. And we've changed our processes to include those measures. So one of the ones I think that a couple that are most important, one being that the employer can now be a post-secondary education institution. So in the past, a post-secondary education institution did not qualify, but now they do. And then the second very helpful area was they're now allowing us to pre-approve applications. So there's a very simple process, and we'll post the site online. Basically, you send us an email with a heading saying application or request for pre-approval. And we ask for some very basic information about the number of students that you wish to hire, etc. And then we issue a pre-approval letter within 2 business days. So that has helped to streamline the process a lot. Once the employer has located a student, then they submit their information online through an online system. And this is a very intuitive, easy system to follow. The employer submits their basic information. And just to add to what Brett said, the company must provide the student with a good quality work integrated learning experience. They also must hire the student on payroll, and that establishes an employee-employer relationship wherein the student is protected by the labor standard laws, safety rules, and so on. And also the position cannot be displacing a position of an existing employee within a company. So the student is then invited to submit their respective information, which is basically, and they add, they have to provide proof of registration at a post-secondary education institution in Canada, as well as proof of citizenship or permanent resident status. So as Brett mentioned, unfortunately, international students do not qualify. Once the application is completed and approved, we invite the employer to sign a contract. And at that point, if the employer wishes, we're able to release 75% of the wage subsidy upfront at that point. So throughout the process, we have various triggers in our system that trigger mid-checks and invite employers and students to complete evaluations at the end and so on. So I just want to reiterate what Brett had to say, and that is that we're in an ever-evolving, changing environment. All of the SWILP providers have met and have discussed various flexibility measures that would help employers during this difficult time and help students. And we put together advice, which we provided to ESDC. Some of those flexibility measures have been approved so far. We've also suggested others, and in this ever-changing environment, we may well have some news that we could share at a later date. I also want to say that ESDC, our colleagues at ESDC have been fantastic throughout the entire program. worked very closely with all the partners, established a SWIL partnership table where we work very effectively and collaboratively together. So I'm happy to answer any questions through the Q&A, and invite you to have a look at our ICTC website and learn more about us and our programs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And I just wanted to address, I know quite a few of you are putting questions in both the chat and the Q&A. Thank you so much for being so engaged. We will be tackling most of these at the end. Ben and I are trying, but some of them are quite specific. So please know that we will get to them. And then there's been a few questions around whether or not we can send a summary document to help with navigating through these links. We are aware that the program can be not confusing. There's a lot of moving parts. So we will be working together on a document that we can share with you that will hopefully also include some of the updates as they continue to evolve. So with that said, Jamie, please kick us off.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Super happy to be here. So thanks to Riipen, and nice to see my colleagues. I also just want to say a really quick thank you to everyone who's joining us. I know that everything is very uncertain for employers right now, so I just want to applaud your commitment to continuing to try to engage young people in your businesses. It's incredibly admirable and very, very, very needed, so thank you. So I work for Venture for Canada, and I'm going to try to screen share here and just flip through a couple slides. There we go. Are you guys seeing that? Someone, Ben, give me a thumbs up. Yes. Okay, radical. So Venture for Canada is a national charity, and we run a couple different programs, but all of them are aimed at enabling young people across Canada to build their entrepreneurial skill sets, get paid work experience in startups and small businesses, as well as develop their own network of like-minded entrepreneurial young people. So Venture for Canada as a whole was founded in 2013, but we became a SWIP delivery agent in 2018. And as Brett mentioned, most of the delivery agents have some sort of sector focus. I'd actually say that Venture for Canada's contract is sector agnostic, but our industry focus is startups and small businesses. So you can have as many as 500 employees and still participate as an employer. That being said, about 70% of our employers have 10 employees or fewer. And definitely on the student side, I think the young people that are coming to Venture for Canada are specifically looking to get experience in a startup, to get an innovative work placement that's going to give them some sort of project that they can really own, or work with your team, you know, but a place where they can really contribute. So we're also really proud of the fact that all of our interns receive at least 20 hours of professional development training. That's all designed with the needs of Canadian employers in mind. So what does our rapidly changing workforce demand of us right now, and what are workers going to need to know how to do and to be in the coming decades? All of our interns get unlimited access to LinkedIn Learning during the course of their placements. And so while our program is designed to really build what we call that entrepreneurial capacity in young people, like my colleagues here, our process is really designed for the busy entrepreneur. So all of the paperwork is digital. As everyone else has mentioned, it's very quick turnaround times. And another thing I think that's unique to our program, perhaps not to all programs, as Elizabeth mentioned, but Venture for Canada allows you to either bring your own student, or we run our own internship program job board where you can access the resumes of pre-qualified candidates. So currently we have 907 students still looking at that job board for summer roles. So just to recap, for our key eligibility on the employer side, again, we need you to have 500 or fewer employees, but you can come from any sector. You can be a for-profit business, a nonprofit, or now a post-secondary institution. And then the other thing that's unique about Venture for Canada's contract is that we have some regional targets, So you do need to be located in British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, or any of the Atlantic provinces. Unfortunately, if your only office is in Ontario or Quebec, we'll need to direct you to either Brett or Elizabeth, because we cannot fund employers in those provinces. So that training piece that I mentioned, it is designed to be completed on an intern's own time. And again, we're really focusing on what skills do students need to bring value to your organization right away, and what skills do we want them to be developing so that they can stay competitive throughout their careers. And so we're looking at both work readiness and future of work skills. I'd say the 3 key skills we're really focusing on with interns are coachability, so the ability to take and implement feedback; productivity, so there's some sessions on project planning, prioritization, goal setting, as well as resilience. What are some of those stress management techniques that we all need to continue to develop so that we can be effective at work, even when things can be intense, like the last couple of weeks for all of us, right? And so some of that curriculum is set, but much of it is a menu of options that the intern can choose to design themselves. So we are still open for new applications for summer. We've always sort of done this pre-eligibility checklist where we can let you know basically immediately via our intake form, which I can post in the chat, whether or not you meet our key eligibility. And then you're invited, if you do, to give us a about 15-minute written application. That written application is always followed up by a short phone screen. So even though we are trying to keep things moving quickly for entrepreneurs and startup founders, we really feel like that human touch has gone a long way in our relationships with employers. So you are invited to spend 5-10 minutes on the phone with either myself or one of my business development associates. So we do need to hear from you currently by May 15th. And then we do need internships for this summer to start by June 1. And like the rest of us here, we are able to pay 75% of what you're eligible for within right at the beginning of the internship. And so yeah, I'll put these links in the chat. So now, how do I stop share? Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks everyone.
So much, Jamie. So we do have a lot of questions. I'd like to jump right into that. And I think for the structure of these, a lot of them, honestly, any of you could take them. Some of them are directed towards the specific program. So I'll just get whichever one of you is most comfortable to jump in, and then you can add to it afterwards if you feel like there's things that are different. I know overall there's some hard rules, and then there's some flexibility within each of the programs. So a few questions really around the net new requirement. So what is meant by a net new student? And for example, like a more specific question is, we hired a co-op student last year. They did 2 terms, and now we've hired him back temporarily for this summer. I wonder if there's any support that we can offer or that we can get for him. He's still enrolled and starts again in September. So I'm not sure which one of you would like to take that.
I could start if you like, and then others could add to it. So the purpose of the student work placement program, as Brett mentioned, is that with the funding through taxpayers' dollars, we're expanding the number of work integrated learning placements across Canada. So the idea behind net new is that the funding that's available allows the employer to fund a student that otherwise they would not have funded without that wage subsidy money. So if last year they funded 5 students, then the expectation would be that they would fund additional students in the coming year. The difference between what they funded last year and what they're funding this year would be net new. Now, to go to the question specifically about, I hired the student, did 2 terms, and now they've hired them. So in our situation at ICTC, unfortunately, we would not approve that because the student is already hired by the employer. We only provide the wage subsidy before the student starts. So if the employer has already funded the student, then that would tell us that this is not a situation where the wage subsidy is absolutely imperative. I will tell you from the intel that we have from the employers that have used our program and other SWIL programs across Canada is that many employers are in very difficult situation today. So some of them are in a situation where they are not hiring students at all, and others are in a situation where they're hiring fewer students than they did previously. So all of the SWIL providers have requested ESDC to waive the net new. Now we're waiting to hear what the answer is on that, so stay tuned. But at the moment, we're still guided by the net new rules as I've explained. So Brett and Jamie, do you want to correct anything I may have said incorrectly or add to it?
I think you pretty well covered it, but you know, I would note, you know, stay tuned because we're anticipating, we can't guarantee, and I certainly don't want to make that claim today, but that some of these rules might be relaxed. So, so you know, look out for some information early next week from us as a follow-up to this discussion.
Yeah, and we can definitely make sure that everyone who is registered on the webinar is able to get those updates as well. So quite a few questions about this. So I'm going to take all of them and cluster them. So there's questions around whether or not this program covers high school students, and as well if the program, any of your programs cover both students still in school and recent graduates. So Jamie, do you want to take that, or Brett, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So high school students, no. Yeah. Do you agree with that, Brett?
Correct. Yeah. Some of us might have other programs specifically for high school students. We currently don't. This program is specifically for students in post-secondary, so Cégep, Polytechnic, college, university. And if they've graduated, then they're considered a recent graduate. Unfortunately, that's a question, a very, very frequently asked question. The only exception to that would be you could find a fourth-year student who is in an accredited co-op program, and this summer, maybe they've graduated, but this summer they've saved their co-op work term. Then you could hire them and be subsidized through us. But otherwise, unfortunately, you would have to look for a recent grad funding program, which is also kind of scarce because they're kind of on their own at that point. So that's why we're trying to build capacities with this program so that people want to hire recent grads.
Yeah, and I would add that first example that Brett gave is the same as well for college students. So we fund many students who are graduating from a diploma and only have a 6-week work term at the end of their college experience. As long as they start their internship with you while they're still part of that 6-week work term, we have been able to fund them through the summer. And then in terms of new grads, everyone is correct. This program does not cover new grads. They must be current students. That being said, Veteran for Canada does have a new grad program called the Fellowship. And we would love the opportunity to tell you about that. It does not come with any funding, but as Brett mentions, we have a lot of resources about connecting you with provincial funding programs that potentially could subsidize that Venture for Canada Fellow.
Could I add, I think there was a question in there about someone who operates a restaurant and wanted to hire somebody from the culinary school.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, a culinary school would be considered an apprenticeship trade. So a cook is an apprenticeship trade and therefore does not qualify for the student work placement program. There are other federal programs and provincial programs across Canada that do provide funding for hiring apprenticeship trades. So I just want to add that. And I just echo what was said earlier. Unfortunately, recent grads do not qualify. And we do fund students who would be in their 4th year and doing their last placement before graduation.
Great, thank you all. So a few questions about the limitations on business. So are your programs open to businesses of all size, or do any of your programs have limits on the number of employees?
I think Jamie was saying that I think we certainly all do kind of have independent ratios. So from our program perspective, and certainly from an organization standpoint, we're always trying to support small, medium enterprise scale-ups. So we reserve 80% of our funding for small, medium. So that's 1 to 9 employees is what we consider small, and then I think 250 is medium. But truthfully, I think that we probably do better than that to support small, medium enterprise. So yeah, but on the same token, a large enterprise really needs to sort of demonstrate that, especially in the spirit of the net new rule that Elizabeth was explaining, a large enterprise would really need to sort of tell the story and indicate, how they need that support and how they would be using that funding to grow opportunities in their enterprise. Usually, no matter what size of company you are, you're still faced with a budget, no matter what office you're in. So usually they can come through with that, but it is something certainly that we do look for.
And if I could just add, so yes, ICTC's focus is primarily with small and medium-sized businesses, and I think that the definition the Government of Canada uses for that is under 500. A company with employees under 500 is the definition. But ESDC has also allowed us to provide funding for larger organizations, but only on a departmental basis. So for example, we may have a large consulting company and they have a particular arm that's focused on, let's say, cybersecurity. So they have allowed us to provide funding for that type of example. But mostly, as Brett said, small and medium-sized companies. And if you look at the structure of Canadian economy, most of the Canadian economy is small and medium-sized companies.
Great, thank you. So to keep going here, there's some questions around the flexibility for delays and when the student has been selected. So we have a question that asks, if I selected a student but have delayed my placement because of COVID, so it hasn't started, am I eligible to apply for the funding?
Absolutely. So, and I see Brett nodding. I don't know if you want to start, but absolutely. In fact, just to reinforce about the COVID measures, those flexibility measures that Brett spoke about are in place until March 31st of 2021. So basically, we're able to pre-approve applications for this summer 2020 term, for the fall 2020 term, and even January 2021. So if the employer is a selected student but wishes to delay hiring till later, we're still happy to deal with that. And we would have dealt with that in that way anyway, pre-COVID.
Wonderful. And a question I think a few of our post-secondary partners are probably having as well is, how do post-secondary institutions, specifically faculty members, leverage student work placement program funding? Who needs to be the hiring body, and can it be a specific faculty member, or does it have to be a faculty or department?
So I'll let somebody else start and then I'll finish.
I've been doing quite a few employer screens this week with post-secondary partners. And so what I've been learning from those is that, at least from Venture for Canada's perspective, we want to do your employer screen with whoever is directly supervising the intern. So we want to speak with the professor. But then in terms of who's paying the student, that's absolutely fine if it's the university. And the other thing that's been coming up is that our funder, so again, we're federally funded, and we you are not allowed to stack other federal funding to pay your part of the student's wage. So for example, I was speaking with someone at the University of Alberta. He's running 2 projects. One is funded exclusively through a National Research Council grant, so other federal funding. I felt it was not appropriate for me to give him SWIP funding for that placement, versus another research project that was funded through a private Alberta foundation. I felt comfortable approving VFC funding for that match. So so what's coming up for us is, that's the big question, is how is a PSI partner paying for the other part of the student's wages?
And just to jump on while we're talking about stacking, there was a question about a BC-based company getting applications from Ontario. So actually in British Columbia, if you're applying for the Career Ready wage subsidy, you're probably also likely for one of the 2 grants that are issued by Innovate BC. You should check them out. And so that would be stackable. You certainly are welcome to apply for both. Of course, you wouldn't be able to net a profit, so that is something that we do check on. And if you're in Ontario or Quebec or even Manitoba, there are provincial tax credits where you can usually get an additional $2,000 to $3,000. That'll come later, obviously, because it's a tax credit, but certainly in BC and a number of those provinces with the long game, I've been kind of saying to employers, you know, there's never been a better time, and you almost can't afford not to take on a student with the amount of supports that are being unrolled right now.
I just added those that I know. I'm sure we'll include them in the resources, but they're available almost everywhere in Atlantic Canada. PEI will give you 100% for a student, so you don't need us. But in the other Atlantic provinces and in BC, there are definitely provincial stackable options.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. And there's a few questions about this. So I'm not sure if you 3 would be the best people to tackle this. So feel free to send all of our attendees elsewhere. But what are the main differences between the Canada Summer Jobs Program that covers 100% of the funding and the Student Work Placement Program? And do you happen to know anything about the program, as the announcement was that it was closed in February?
I can start. Oh, Elizabeth, you're on mute. You go ahead.
So the difference between the Student Work Placement Program and the federal summer student program is that the SWILP program must have a work integrated component to it. So the summer program is basically providing summer jobs for students without that additional learning component attached to it. Typically, the way the federal government does the summer student program is they distribute a certain number of budget number and placements to each province, and it's administered by Service Canada. Jamie, you would probably know that in Nova Scotia, our Nova Scotia government employees who have a student work program would work hand in hand in making some determinations on the funding. But typically these are similar jobs funded year over year by various groups. The same groups tend to get funding each year through the Summer Grants Program. Jamie, did you want to add something?
No, I think that covers it.
Awesome.
Brett?
Thank you all. So there's a few questions here about the length of the program. So more specifically, I have someone asking if they would be able to get funding on a 2-month placement.
Yeah, we certainly will fund part-time placements. We don't really see a lot of those in the fall and winter because students are engaged in full-time studies, but certainly if there's a good opportunity in the summertime, we would support a part-time placement.
And just to add to that, normally a placement would be about 560 hours. But with the recent COVID situation, ESDC has introduced flexibility measures. So the start date and end date of the placement are flexible. So we don't have to start in May, or we don't have to start in September, or we don't have to start in January. And the duration, the number of hours, can also be more flexible. So at this point, we would look at any and all applications.
Yeah, same for Venture for Canada. We've always welcomed part-time placements year-round. It's never a requirement to be a co-op student to participate in our program. And so, yeah, we definitely have had part-time or shorter-term placements. We do really love to see a minimum of 320 hours. That's about 20 hours a week. But again, during this pandemic, there's a lot of flexibility.
Awesome. So again, a clustering of questions because we have so many and they're still coming in. Thank you for that. So a question about stackability, but more so, is someone able to apply for funding from each of your organizations? Okay. And I assume unless they had like 3 separate students.
Right.
Okay.
And I think the key thing that I think is great guidance is that you can't use other federal funding for the same student. So because TechNation is federal, because ITCT is federal, you can't stack it with my federal funding. I mean, obviously we're the same program, but that you really need to look at provincial or private or municipal sources for stacking.
And I would say that the SWIL partners are very good that way. Sometimes, you know, we've been contacted and the partner has said, I think this employer is applying for you as well as us, and we've checked, and sure enough, that's the case, or vice versa. So I think we've been good corporate citizens in those areas.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think we have a few questions here just around the delivery of the funding. So how does the funding get from your organizations to the business who applied for the funding, and when does that happen?
So normally the funding would be distributed to the employer after the work term has been completed. So the employer signs a contract, the work term progresses. At the end of the work term, the employer submits proof of payroll, and we issue payment. But now with COVID, we have permission from the federal government to provide 75% of the wage subsidy upfront. So we're pleased to do that. Not all companies are asking for that, but those that do, we are able to issue that. We issue it though at the time that the contract is signed. So then we know what the commitment of the employer is, as well as our commitment.
And I would just add Venture for Canada. So for the internship program, we have always paid 50% of what so half of the subsidy within the first month of the placement, and then the final half at the end of the placement. So then now, obviously, with these SWIP changes, we're paying 75% as the first payment and 25% at the end. But that 50-50 split has always been a part of our program.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So I think to wrap up, because we still have so many questions left, and I think many of these are directed specifically at either the SWILT program in general or your individual programs, I did want to give each of you the opportunity to just do some closing thoughts, and then also let people know how they can get in touch with you if they have more questions, or if they have already funding that they want to apply for, or they think that they qualify, what would be the best next step for them. And Brett, we can start with you since you're first on my screen.
Yeah, thanks again everybody for taking the time today. Jamie touched on it earlier. It's a really challenging time, and it's great that that you folks are kind of everyone's pivoting and being resourceful, and the resources are out there. You just kind of have to find and identify them and keep up to date with all of the changes. So you know, I would just say sort of stay tuned for the information that we send out next week. I did leave a contact email if you have any kind of burning questions for today or tomorrow, or if you kind of want to get the ball rolling on something. We're here to help, so you can email us at careerready@technationcanada.ca. And maybe I'll just kind of leave it at that. Thank you, everybody. And again, thanks to Riipen for hosting today.
Awesome. Jamie, you can go next.
Yeah, sure. I'll keep it short and sweet. Again, thanks for having me, and I'm wishing everybody on the call the best of luck and continued fortitude. I am going to put the simplest thing, to be honest, the simplest thing if you're interested in participating with Venture for Canada is to just go straight to our application form, even bypassing the intake form that I took, that I posted before. So I'll put the full 15-minute application form in the chat. And again, we provided that you're in one of our allowable provinces and you have fewer than 500 employees, or if you're a PSI and your department has fewer than 500 people, we'll invite you to a phone screen in a matter of days, and you can ask all your questions on the phone with me or one of my colleagues. And so, yeah, we look forward to speaking with you, and yeah, best of luck. Thanks for having me.
Oh, Elizabeth, I think you're just on mute.
Thank you. So thanks to Riipen for hosting the webinar, and for all the participants and your excellent questions, and also for my colleagues in the SWIL partnership. ICTC WIL digital program can be found online. We'll post in the same way Venture for Canada has our direct application, but if you want to just note this for the moment, go to https://will-digital.fluidview.com. So we'll post that address in the chat for you. So thanks very much, and looking forward to providing some new news within the next 24 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I recognize that there was a number of questions here that may not have been answered today. So we will do our best to put together a follow-up document that is able to tackle some of those questions. From our end, if you're interested in learning more about Riipen and how you can connect with students for project-based learning, feel free to visit our website, and I'll get Ben again to post that site in the chat for those of you who are interested. And please stay tuned for a follow-up email that will have the recording of the webinar from today, but also within the next few days, hopefully some updates from this group that will be beneficial to helping us get more students employed. So thank you everyone for joining, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. And thank you, Brett, Jamie, and Elizabeth for making the time today to be here with us and for educating our partners on your programs.